hope you guys are awake. Here's Adam.
Adam alcoholic. So we talked about the third step promises. And on the top of 64, there's a warning. It says, though our decision, right, the third step decision, was a vital and crucial step, it has little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of. There's that word again. The things in us that have been blocking us from God, blocking me from myself, and blocking me from others. It doesn't say face and cope with, face and endure, face and go to therapy over. All that stuff might be good. To be rid of it. Like I said last night, you asked Michelangelo how he made the statue of David. They said he never made the statue of David. He chipped away everything that wasn't David. The idea with this process is to be rid of the things in me that are blocking me. And so it talks about some real simple things here. And what it really, from my experience, that third step decision without the inventory is fantasy. In other words, I'm not following that idea up with an honest look at what's blocking me. So I want to talk a little bit about these ideas. Esteem is don't you know who I think I am? Pride, who I pretend to be. Security, what I need. Ambition, what I want. Personal relations is my deep-seated belief about every single relationship. The way a friend should treat me, the way a spouse should treat me, the way a brother should treat me, a mother, a father, an employer, a dentist. I have a deep-seated belief system about every single relationship. And if you notice, on the top of the next page, 65, you'll see these three words: hurt, threatened, or interfered. If anything harms, threatens, or interferes with that belief system, what happens is I go into resentment. Anything that's blocking me from what I want, or someone that doesn't behave the way I think they should. Resentment's really, it's like an expectation under construction. I have to look at that. Everywhere I have an expectation. So it's going to ask me to look at these, what we call the common manifestations of self. We talked about this last night. That's the first warning on 64. The next one is, it says resentment is the #1 offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. It's like an acid. It only eats the container it's in. So while these people that I have resentment towards, they may be sleeping like a baby, it's destroying me. One of my friends said this line. He said, the worst thing you can ever do to yourself is hate somebody else. I didn't get that. But it's something that does something to me. There's a saying, I hate to say this, I know it sounds stupid, but this old timer said it to me. He goes, people that bring sunshine to the lives of others cannot keep it from themselves. So this umbrella that keeps me safe and protected is going to require that I take certain actions. So what I want to do is, I've got 3 ideas to look at in the resentment inventory. One would be a parent that abandoned me. And I talked about this a little bit last night. So if I put my dad on the list, I resent my dad for abandoning me. Esteem would be, I'm the greatest son a father could have. Pride would be, others should see that I should be loved and respected. What do I need from my dad? I need him to be there for me. Now, what do I want? I want to be the center of my dad's world. That's what I really wanted. Personal relations is my belief system about a father and son relationship. A real dad is always there for his kid. Now, if you look at that in line with that, the first one, the fear right next to that is going to be, I'm not good enough. The second fear is not being loved. The third fear is not being important. Not being valued. Being alone. So I'm starting to look at how this brings out the fear. This is one of 3 inventories. So when I look at it, the person is going to be column 1, the cause is going to be column 2, 3 is those 7 manifestations of self. So I'm looking at that, and this is just an example. All I'm doing, guys, is I'm giving an example of the way I write the inventory. And when I do this, when I'm working with a new person, I'll use these 3 examples, and then I'll ask them to go write 3 or 4 on their own. And whatever those are, you have a list of them. I resent my mom for being unavailable. I resent my brother for stealing our inheritance. I resent my wife for cheating. I resent so forth. And you start to look at that list, and they're all going to fall into line. It's almost like a program. It's a set of instructions that's going to produce some information. My sponsor said, you can write an autobiography for a 4-step. There's only one problem. You already know your story. What this is asking me to do is it's asking me to subject these resentments to a very specific set of questions. So when I'm looking at personal relations, I have an idea that a real dad is always there for his kid. A real dad loves his son unconditionally. A real dad never leaves his family, whatever that is. And I'm starting to look at the fears. And then it's going to ask me, as we go through this, I'm going to read these 3 on the 3rd column, and then we're going to flip the page. So the second one might be, I resent my employer for exploiting me, right? I mean, this is the American way. We just work hard enough so they don't fire us. They pay us just enough so we don't quit, right? Isn't that the way it works? So I resent my employer for exploiting me. Esteem is, I'm the greatest employee they got. If I thought I was a lousy employee, I wouldn't be, surprised when they exploited me. Others should see what a hard worker I am. So the fear is I'm not good enough. The fear is I'm a lousy employee. What do I need from my employer? I need to be treated fairly for a fair day's wage, right? Fear of being ripped off. Fear of being exploited. You see, we're talking about the 100 forms of fear. It's starting to bring those fears out. What do I want? I want the guy to treat me fairly. I want him to do what he said he was going to do. Like give me X number of hours with no weekends. Or I was going to get benefits. Or I was going to get a lunch break. Whatever that is. If it's not in writing and I don't have that transparency, what's going to happen? I'm going to start hating my employer. Right? Personal relations. An employer-employee relationship. I always write the relationship on the top right-hand corner of the inventory. So if it's a brother, sister, uncle, aunt, employee, employer, if I'm working for my father-in-law, right? Now he's not my employer, he's my family. I'm expecting special treatment from him because I'm sleeping with his daughter. Now I really got a resentment. That's why it says here, we cannot be confused about values. If I do not understand the relationship coming into this inventory, there's going to be trouble later for me. This is a very simple way of approaching it. It's also probably one of the greatest anger management tools you will ever see. Because I'm looking at these things. What is my belief about an employer? That an employer treats an employee fairly. It affects my pocketbook. When I look at the sex relations, in this case, it's my manhood. So, with a dad and a son, a real man is never abandoned by his father. With an employer, a real employer is faithful and true to his employee. That's all. So we'll do the third one. I resent my old lady for cheating on me. All right? Esteem. I'm the greatest husband she could have. Pride. Others should see what a great catch I am. So the fear is maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm a loser. And you have to understand, those fears, when they come out, I start to see how the fears drive the 3rd column. The fact that I feel like a loser makes me work harder at being a good husband. The fact that I think I'm not good enough. That's why we hold on to stuff. I'll start to see the relationship between the fear and that 3rd column. So what do I want from my woman? I want her to be loyal. I want her to be honest with me. Fear of being lied to. Fear of being betrayed, right? I'm starting to look at the fears as they come out of this 3rd column. Right? Personal relations. A real wife or girlfriend is always loyal and honest to her guy, right? I mean, is that what I believe? I mean, unless you're polyamorous, which is fine. We have no judgment about that, but you better know that coming into the relationship. My old lady said, don't cheat without me. I mean, that's some sick shit, right? But at least I knew that. At least I knew it. But this is about honesty. It's about integrity. Okay? So I'm starting to look at what this looks like. A real man is never cheated on, and she's making me look like a punk, right? A chump. So I look at that. I'm looking at all these fears. If you look at the way this came out, when I write this inventory, it is very exact. It's going to be exactly as we go through this section of the book. And this has everything to do with my 10th and 11th step. If I do not recognize this here, if I cannot explain this in this part of the book, I'm not going to be able to understand it when I'm doing it on the fly. So now it's asking me, after I do this, right, it said we listed resentments, institutions, and principles. What's a principle? I got a lot of principles. Right? I don't like people that tailgate. I don't like people that tell me what to do. I don't like people that disrespect me, that people that challenge me, right? I have a lot of very simple ideas that have become almost like a code in my life. And if anybody harms, threatens, or interferes with that belief system, right? Don't disrespect me in public. Whatever that might be, if that happens, I cop an attitude. And then people are like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm fine. They're like, why don't you tell your face that, bro? Right? But I'm not able to communicate it because I don't have the ability to have clarity here. I have to have clarity with these ideas. If you guys have any questions, we're going to address them in a little bit. So it's asking me about why I'm angry, right? Well, it's our esteem, our pocket money, our ambition, our personal relations, every one of these I just went through. Because each one of these has a relationship to the resentment and the fear. The fear drives the belief system. The belief system is where the resentment lies. Okay? So I'm looking at that. And then it says we go back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. Okay? We consider it carefully. Alright? This isn't just me just running through this and checking the box. I'm not coming to the meeting 1 minute after it starts and leaving 1 minute after it ends so I can check off a box. This is my life. This isn't just about being sober. It's not about not drinking. County jail's about not drinking. This is about living clean and sober and having peace and power and purpose in my life. It's important. So it says it is apparent that the world and its people often wronged us. And that's it. To conclude that others was wrong is as far as I ever got. I'm a hater. If I don't get past this, and it says if I don't, what happens is I become the worst version of myself. The outcome is people continue to wrong us. And we stay angry. I have to see what happens if I don't get past this. Sometimes it was remorse and then we were sore at ourselves, but the more we fought to try to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seems to win. What that means, in war, both sides always lose. No one wins in a war. And that's what happens with every conflict that I have if I engage. I'm not trying to say that I have to be passive, but I have to be aware of where my power is. Okay? So it says here, it is plain. This is the first warning in the fourth step. A life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility, unhappiness. It means uselessness. To the precise extent that we permit this, do we waste the hours that might have been worthwhile. And it says, but for people like us, right, the hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience. This business of resentment is great. We found that it is fatal. Okay? When harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit, right? We shut ourselves off from God. We shut ourselves off from love. We shut ourselves off from relationships. We shut ourselves off from being useful, from purpose and power and peace in our life. I have to understand that that's what I'm losing. I may beat them down. I may shut them down. I may get them out of my life. But I'm losing something here. I'm losing something in my humanity by doing that. And I had to pay attention to that. Then it says, and the word list is going to be used 5 times. This is a textbook. It says going back to the list, right? For it holds the key to the future. It says we have to look at it from an entirely different angle. That means come over here and look at the resentment from here. See, I can't see the picture when I'm in the frame. It's asking me to come out of the picture and admit, acknowledge, and accept it, especially with another human being, so I can see the truth about it. That's what this is. So it's asking me. It says we began to see that the world dominated us. It owned me because I'm vulnerable to it. It says in that state the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had the power to actually kill me. It's killing my soul. How could I escape? And then it says this piece here on 66 at the bottom, and this is where the transition starts to happen. It says, we realize the people who wronged us, now in this case, my dad, my old lady, and my employer, those were the examples, were perhaps spiritually sick. And then it says, although we did not like their symptoms, you might want to write this column 2, and the way it disturbed us, column 3, like ourselves were sick too. How do I prove that statement? You know how I prove that statement? Everywhere I got a resentment. Now I'm going to look at the top of the back half of this form, and I'm going to say, how did I do the same thing, right? How did I do the same thing to the person in column 2 that I resented them for? So if I resent my dad for abandoning me, did I ever abandon anyone I love for my true love, alcohol? If I resent my old lady for cheating on me, did I ever cheat on her, right? And I might do it in another way. I resent my employer for exploiting me. Did I ever exploit my employer? Come on. People are taking toilet paper home, fucking nails, tools, all kinds of motherfuckers ripping me up. I'm entitled. Right? Come on, we do that shit. Because they weren't fair with us. You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. Right? So I look at that. And I have to be really clear because this is how I justify it. Okay? It said, so I'm asking myself, this is going to be the next piece when I'm writing the inventory. Am I capable of the same behavior that I resent this person for? This is when it says we forgive others as they forgive us, right? We're asking God to forgive us. Am I capable of forgiving others? I can't get through the door to 8 and 9 and forgive people that have hurt me unless I see I'm capable of the same behavior, right? Okay. So now it says, like ourselves, we're sick too. So that's how I'm proving that that is something I'm also capable of. And then here's the sick man's prayer. This is something I got to do all the time. This is the next prayer in the 4th step. It says, we ask God to show them the same tolerance, pity, which is compassion, and patience we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. So when a person offends me, right, it says, and I'm not saying it to them, I'm saying it to me. The big book is not asking the world to change for me. It's asking me to get to a place where I could say, this is a sick person, how can I be helpful? Circle the word helpful. You keep asking what's God's will, we're going to tell you exactly what God's will is. God doesn't care if I'm a plumber or a stockbroker. It's like if I look at a kid full of, a playground full of kids, and some are on the swing, some are on the slides, some are on the merry-go-rounds. Do I care what they play on? No, I just don't want them embezzling each other, beating each other up, throwing each other off the rides. God's will is for me to be kind, to be helpful, to be supportive. It's going to be really clear on what that is, okay? It says, to show them this, save me from being angry, God save me from being angry, thy will be done. And then this is what we call the 4th column, but it really is 5 different things here. First part of it is the realization. Then it says we avoid retaliation or argument. That means vindication and debate. If you know what that means, right? Argument is debate, right? Vindication means you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you, all right? And why does it say that? Because we destroy our chance of being helpful. The word helpful is used 3 times here. That's what he means. That I need to learn how to be helpful. It's just like the 3rd step prayer, right? Take away my difficulties. The difficulties with Mr. Brown, okay? And it says here, at least God can show us, take a kindly and tolerant view of each one. And then this is the next piece, and we're speeding through this for a reason, because we've got just enough time to really do 10 and 11 if we get through this. It says, referring back to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done. In this case, my mom, my employer, or my dad, my employer, and my girlfriend. We resolutely look for our own mistakes, okay? Where had I been selfish? Same thing. Selfish is an attitude. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down that realization. I'm going to start with my dad. I looked at the 3rd column. I looked at all the fears. Fear of being alone. Fear of being abandoned. Fear of not being loved. Fear of being worthless. He was never there for me. Fear of not having any value. Fear of not having a dad. Fear of not being guided. Fear of not having a best friend. I mean, all this stuff comes into that fear, now it's going to ask me to look at it from the other side. So it's asking me now, when I look at this piece of paper, I'm going to look at my self-seeking, right? Self-seeking are the actions that I take to maintain the resentment. I had nothing to do with my dad not being there for me, right? But what I did because of that is I punished him. What I did because of that is I fucking acted out. What I did because of that is I started to use him as an excuse for my failure. I didn't have a dad. I'm not accountable. I can do whatever I want. And then I started to blame him for my failure. Every time I saw what I did before, during, and after in that resentment, I started to see how I played a victim because of that. But the realization is, again, how have I done the same thing that he did to me to others? I abandoned everyone in my life to get loaded. And then I look at the selfishness. The selfishness is not the action, it's the attitude. And that attitude is, you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. I shut that guy out of my life for a decade. Wouldn't let him be a dad. Even when he wanted to be, I drew that line. Right? That's what I did. And then it's going to ask me this last piece. It's going to ask me on the back side of this, it's going to ask me the dishonesty, which is not the lies I tell others, it's the lies I tell myself. That my dad really didn't love me. That he meant to hurt me. When in reality, he was incapable of it. He couldn't do it. He never had, his dad was off fighting a war. He had no idea how to be a dad. So I had to understand that. And for me, like I said last night, what happened through this process is I got to forgiveness. Forgiveness is releasing someone from the prison of my own mind. It has nothing to do with him. Behind forgiveness is compassion. To grant him the same pity. Look up the word. It means compassion for another spiritually sick person. The lie I told myself, my dad's love for me should have been more powerful than his disease. But I couldn't do that, right? How can I not get to forgiveness? So now I look at my old lady. I resent her for cheating on me, right? So now we're looking at the realization on the back side of the side that we went over 5-10 minutes ago. Did I ever cheat on her with my true love, cocaine or alcohol or meth or whatever? Or actually do it for the Puritans in the room, right? Some guys never did. And maybe that's okay too. But now I'm looking at these self-seeking actions. Did I know she was spiritually sick? And of course, if I met her at the strip club, there could have been a problem, right? But a lot of times, maybe not. Maybe I fucking neglected her for 10 years. I know, I've gone through this shit with guys in inventory. They're in state prison for 10 years, and they're writing the inventory. I can't believe she cheated on me. A 22-year-old beautiful girl is supposed to sit there and collect dust for 10 years while you're in prison. That's irrational. It's not fair to her that she should pay for my sins, right? But I had to be able to see that. Some people, you know what? No disrespect. Some people can't see that. Some people will never see that. But it's asking me to look at my self-seeking in this particular relationship and see if I made a decision based on self that left me in a position to be hurt. So in the self-seeking, I'm looking at before, during, and after. I'll use another example. I got molested as a kid. I had nothing to do with what happened to me at 9, 10 years old. I had everything to do with the next 20 years of the hate and the homophobia and the damage that I caused because I couldn't work through that. And once I realized that, as in war, the victor only seems to win, I became forgiving. And I got over it. Just like racism and everything else. A lot of the shit that I'd learned from generations in my family, I had to get past it. Do I want a quiet mind? Do I want a loving heart? Do I want to have power and peace in my life? I have to keep going there. It's going to say it in the 9th step. We're not going to get there today. I'm willing to go to any lengths for victory over drugs and alcohol. That's going to be a question I got to ask when I'm balking. Balking is a baseball term. It means to hesitate. You hesitate in this, your life will be lost. So I'm starting to look at these ideas, and I'm looking at the self-seeking with her now. You know, when I was out there abandoning the relationship, neglecting her, was that part of the actions that I took that led up to her stepping out of the relationship? I was never there for her. I was mean to her. Maybe not. Maybe you were the perfect husband. I have no idea. But it's your truth. It's not mine. All I'm doing is sharing with you what I discovered when I went through this. And I found out I wasn't there for her. I mean, I was so selfish and self-centered that it took me 10 years of my recovery to even realize what she needed and what she wanted, that I didn't even see it. And then the selfishness in this case, which is the next piece, is I can do whatever I want and not pay the consequences. That's what it looks like in a neglectful relationship. And the lie I had to tell myself is she didn't need love and attention. That's the lie. That she would just sit there while I neglected that relationship. And I see that I had made a decision based on self that left me in a position to be hurt. Now going to the next one, all right? I'm looking at the employer. I resent the employer for exploiting me. The realization, did I ever exploit an employer? And then I look at the self-seeking. Did I have specific information on the job description? Did I know about the benefits? Did I make a commitment to be there at a certain time every day? Did I not follow through with my commitment, or maybe they didn't? And then when I didn't get my way and I had resentment, how did I act at that job? Or I started not talking to anybody. Then I started padding my expense account. Or I started doing a million different things to justify the fact that I had a resentment. Instead of maybe being transparent up front, being accountable up front. Because this is the ideas that's going to move into 10 and 11 in the next session. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at how I punished my employer because I didn't feel like I was being treated fairly. I do that shit. And I might even be unconscious of it. But a lot of it had to do with me being able to communicate with them in the front. I'm so scared I'm not going to get a job, I'll take anything. And then it comes back to bite me in the ass when I'm working weekends and I'm working overtime and I'm not getting paid extra and all that stuff. And then my family's neglected and the next thing you know I'm drunk. I need to get this down and understand. To thine own self be true. He didn't write this stuff because he just wanted to fill in pages. He wrote it because this is the personality profile of an alcoholic or an addict. If I don't get this down, I'm not going to get free. So I start to look at that. I start to look, again, same attitude. I can do whatever I want and not pay the consequences. I have to know these things coming into it. I have to believe in myself enough to stand up for myself too. And then it's looking at that last piece. Where was I dishonest? You know what the dishonesty with an employer is? That my welfare is more important than his bottom line? Are you kidding? Do you know how fucking delusional that is? So you work for a big company, you think your welfare and your overtime is more important than his profit? Please. That's the lie. I have to see the lie. Now, when I'm finished with these three, and I might have like 20 or 30 of these. If you're like me, I try to keep the guys I work with to do maybe 20. If they got like 100, I'll hear the 20 because it all gets to be the same after that. And we can go through. I'm going to spend 3 weeks listening to a guy's fist step. I want to get the major chunks of truth from that so I can show them another way to approach their life. That's the way I'm doing this. And now I'm going to look at those fears, like with my girlfriend. I'm a lousy boyfriend. I'm not good enough. I'm a loser, right? All those fears. Fear of being alone. Fear of being lied to. Fear of being cheated on. Fear of being abandoned. The ones from my dad, again, same thing. Being alone, not being loved, not being important, not being respected. The fear with my employer, right? Being exploited, being ripped off. And I list all those fears vertically on a piece of paper. The fear inventory is right there. I have it. You can take a picture of it. And what I'm going to do is I list them vertically is I'm starting to look at why I have the fear. So what we're looking at on the bottom of page 67, all right, there's another thing. It says fear Notice the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, and the employer. Okay? Pay attention. Okay? This short word touches every aspect of our lives. Here's the warning. It is an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence is shot through with it. It sets in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune. So this is where I send that nasty email. This is where I burn the bridge ahead of myself. This is where I thought I'd start to act before I think. It's impulsiveness. That's why this is going to be linked with pausing when agitated in 10 and 11. For every year I've been sober, I've had another second to pause before I send that nasty email. Or I do something without thinking. And that's the maturity here. That's what it is. So I'm looking at this, and it said, yeah, didn't I set the ball rolling? Which is another way of saying, didn't I make a decision based on self, right? So it's asking me, we review our fears thoroughly, we put them on paper, even though we have no resentment in connection. Top of 68. Okay, what I was asked to do is, now there are fears that are not connected to resentment. Fear of spiders, crocodiles, whatever. You know, there's other fears that are not connected to resentment. But it asks me, it says, we ask why we have these fears. Okay, it's right there. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed me? All fear, if you're new, is agnosticism. I didn't understand. It's like that poem Footprints. Anybody seen the poem Footprints? Like, there's this poem, and it says, as I walk through my life, I look back, and he's like in the afterlife, and he's saying, God, you promised if I gave my life to you, you'd never leave me. And every time I see my life, every time there was trouble, there was only one set of footprints. I can't believe you left me. You promised you'd always be with me. And God says, that's not when I left you, dummy, that's when I carried you. And we get weepy, right? We read that poem and we realize that car wreck, that overdose, that gunshot that missed my ear, that stuff, right? I realized there was something there. But all these fears are based on the fact that I do not trust God. I do not trust that there's something else for me, that there's something more here. So what I do with this is I list all these fears vertically and I ask why I have them. So fear of being alone, if I'm alone, it's painful. That's why I fear it. Why do I fear being in pain? Because if I'm in pain long enough, I'm going to get loaded again. Why do I fear getting loaded again? Because I don't want to die. Why do I fear dying? Because I fear the unknown. Why do I fear the unknown? Because I really feel that I fear there's no God. See, every fear really goes back to agnosticism. I do not really trust. I have to live my life like I'm going to die tomorrow. I have to plan like I'm going to live forever. It's going to say at the bottom of this page, we commence to outgrow fear. If I do this exercise with the inventory, I take the fear, I list them vertically, I look at them horizontally, and I trace it back to God, I will commence to outgrow fear. It's just a formula. It's a formula that's worked for thousands of people before us. So that's the fear inventory. I go through that process and I start to look at this. It says, just to the extent that we do as God would have us, this is the promise on page 68, and humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. It's a promise. We never apologize. I've got this note here about the farmer and the horse. Anybody heard the Chinese parable about the horse? Some of you guys have heard it. This farmer, and it relates a little bit, and it's about judgment. But this Chinese farmer, he has this beautiful stallion, and it's the pride of his town. And he's got this stallion, and one day the stallion runs away. And all the neighbors come over to his house, and they're, oh, it's so terrible, you've lost your prize stallion. What are you going to do? What do you think? And he goes, I don't know. It might be good. It might be bad. A couple of weeks later, everyone's mourning the horse. The stallion comes back with 5 more stallions. They're all in his yard. Now he's like really rich. And they're all coming, oh, it's so great. Look what happened. Your stallion came back. Now you have 5 of these beautiful horses. What do you think? He goes, I don't know. It might be good. It might be bad. No emotion. Couple weeks later, his son is breaking in one of these brand new horses. And his son has this terrible accident and breaks his leg. And all the neighbors come over, oh, look what's happened to your son, it's so awful. Look what's happened. What do you think? He goes, I don't know. Might be good, might be bad. A couple weeks later, the army comes and takes all the able-bodied men. His son can't go. He's got a broken leg. And the story goes on and on. Who am I to judge? So I'm looking at this and I'm going through this. We never apologize for depending on our Creator. Okay? We can laugh at those who think spirituality is the way of weakness. It says paradoxically it is the way of strength. You think those people that walked into the war and didn't have fear? They acted in spite of it. And I've asked myself this same thing. If I keep walking through the fear, and sometimes talking about it, over time, I've commenced to outgrow it. I don't live with it. I don't feel it like that anymore. It ruled me. It was like he said, the corroding thread, the fabric of my life was shot through with it. This is a formula to overcome that. So he said they trust their God, they never apologize. And here's the last prayer. We ask God to remove our fear, and this is what all of this is about. Redirect. It's directing my fear to faith. It's directing my resentment to love. It's directing my dishonesty to honesty. It's directing my selfishness to usefulness. That's what it's directing. It says we ask God to direct our attention to what He would have us be. And once we commence to outgrow fear, that's a powerful thing. And the last piece, this next piece, which is for me probably the most significant part of the inventory, the relationship inventory. And if you go through this and you look at the word sex, it's your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. If I substitute the word sex for relationships, it works perfectly. Okay, the language in 1939 and my dictionary from 1909, sex and relationships were almost synonymous. This isn't about what's going on between the sheets. These are 9 specific questions that are asking me about my relationship conduct. And it's giving me some very specific ideas. I also have that written down. I have the guys I work with write down on a piece of paper the top 5 romantic, emotional relationships. You can also do this with personal relationships. It doesn't have to be sexual, because I've also tried to enjoy a reputation I don't deserve. It talks about, it's like driving a Lamborghini and living in a 1-bedroom apartment. A lot of people do stuff like that, because they're very concerned about what people think. All right? So it's asking me, now about relationships. Many of us need an overhaul there. Now, I was told this, and I don't necessarily believe it, but when you overhaul an engine, you know what you got to do? You have to stop it for a little bit. That's hard. That's hard. But above all, we try to be sensible on this question. So it's easy to get way off track. Okay? So I'm going to go down to the first instruction. It says, it's on 69, on the middle of the page. It says, we do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's relationship conduct. Look at the wording. We all have relationship problems. Circle the word sex if you have to. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about them? We review our relationship conduct over the years. Where had we been selfish? Now, I'm looking now at an attitude. Right? I can do whatever I want, not pay the consequences. It's not the same as inconsiderate. He's saying dishonest or inconsiderate. That dishonesty is all over. People do it on Bumble, Tinder. We were just talking about everybody's 10 years younger. Everyone's got their face like filtered, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. When we get in relationships with women, we want them to stay the way they are. They want us to change, right? I mean, it's kind of true. The hardest thing for a woman to say is, I'm wrong. The hardest thing for a man to say is, I'm married. A little humor, right? Lighten it up a little bit. So we're talking about dishonesty. We're talking about inconsideration, right? Who did I hurt? So what I'm doing is I'm taking these relationships and I'm looking at them on a piece of paper. One of the things that I do is I start to look at the things that come up there's a second page to this where it talks about the history. Look at why I got involved. What were my motives? Motives are really important. She was hot, she had a good, whatever it might be. But I'm looking at my motives, and I'm also looking at things that come up in the relationship. A lot of stuff comes up. Jealousy comes up, right? Resentment comes up. Passive aggression comes up. Competition comes up. You never think you'd be competitive with a woman, but oh, I did this, well, I did that. So, you know, all that stuff that comes up, I have to pay attention to it. I start to look at some of these ideas. I'm trying to change her, right? So control comes up. These are all things, if you do the inventory and you really search in your heart, you're going to see that these things come up. So I'm taking the top 5 girls in my case, I list their name, I put the motives, I answer these questions on the motives, the things that came up in the inventory. It asks some, this is one of the places where it asks, what should I have done instead? Okay, so it's asking me how I might have operated differently. Right? I'm so scared to lose her that I'm going to act a certain way. All that stuff. The fear's going to come up again in this area. So I'm looking at it. Did I unjustly arouse jealousy? Right? Suspicion, right? I'm not taking her text. I'm not calling her for 3 days. I'm going to punish her, right? All that stuff that comes up. I'm looking at it. It says we got all this down on paper. So typically what I do is I got it on one of these sheets here. It's easier to do it this way. You do it on a blank piece of paper. This has got the 9 questions on the front, and it's got these 4 ideas. Motives for getting involved, conduct in the relationship, major points, jealousy, abandonment, blah, 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 how it ended, right? I'm looking at that, and I'm getting it all down on paper, okay? And it's asking me to look at it. One of the ways I do the ideal that they're talking about now for you guys is if you had a daughter, hypothetically, what kind of man would I want my daughter to marry? There it is. So I'm looking now. Remember on page 55, we didn't get there, but it says the fundamental idea of God is within every man, woman, and child. And it says it's obscured. Okay, this great story about this kid. He's out here on the beach flying a kite. And the kite's above the clouds. And this old guy says, kid, what are you doing? He goes, I'm flying a kite. And he says, how do you know you're flying a kite? He says, well, I feel the pull of it. A lot of people will tell you you don't feel the pull of it. I feel the pull of doing the right thing. Once I start to look at this, I admit and acknowledge these ideas, I'm going to start to move towards this power. So when I say if I had a daughter, what kind of man would I want my daughter to marry? The blueprint of God is already in me. Loving, compassionate, loyal, considerate, supportive, responsible, generous, steadfast. Every one of those ideas is in my soul. It came with the package. Whether I realize it or not, the fundamental idea. And now the question is, how have I been treating God's daughters? It's important. You know, if you want vacant relationships where you date by the hour, none of my business. It's fine. A lot of us have done that. It's vacant. Some people want that. Then you don't have to fix their car and all that stuff. I get it. I get it. But it's also called playing it safe. You know, you don't want to take a chance on getting hurt. You can't grow. See, a smooth sea doesn't make for a good sailor. You know, and I love my bench group. Oh, there's a slip behind every skirt, and the beaver trail leads to wide country. You know what? I want to get in there and take a chance. I want to challenge myself a little bit. I'm going to challenge myself. I'd rather get hurt. It depends if you want that kind of relationship in your life. But again, that's where the motive is. What do you really want? And it's going to tell me here some real specific things. It says, we try to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future relationship life. Middle of 69, we subject each relationship to the test of the 9 questions. I'm taking each girl, right, and I'm subjecting these 9 questions, not whether I was or not. How was I selfish? How was I dishonest? How was I inconsiderate? I'm looking at it in black and white. This may seem like a lot of work. It's not. Okay, I hear guys in AA going to law school and getting degrees, but they can't read this book. They can't put a little time in this, and they're now a drunk lawyer, like Ray. My very life, if you're new, depends on my constant thought of others. It also depends on me doing this work. You either believe it or you don't. We skip through the doctor's opinion, but there's a line in the beginning of the doctor's opinion where it says, do I believe in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery, yes or no? If I don't, no one's going to do this work. I 100% believe this works. I've done it, and I've seen other people do it, and we share a very, very special fraternity here of people that have done this work, and we've become the better version of ourselves because of it. It's up to you. But, I mean, if you don't like what's going on here, you know what they say, they'll gladly refund your misery with interest. So I'm looking at this. I also, if I wanted to look at an ideal, if I were to ask what the perfect partner, for me it's a female, I have no judgment, but the perfect woman in my life, those qualities are the same. Loving, compassionate, loyal, considerate, supportive, responsible, generous, steadfast. It's a blueprint. What I would hope for my daughter, what I would hope in a relationship are going to be parallel. That idea is with already in me. So I'm going through this, and it says, whatever our ideal turns out to be. Bill did not want to be the arbiter of anyone's relationship conduct for a reason. Some people are serial polygamists. They get in a committed, monogamous relationship, and they feel so trapped that they get loaded. Then you got this like perfect angel guy, and he cheats once, and he feels so guilty he gets loaded. So the rule is going to be on the next page. He didn't want to be the arbiter of this because some of us are not fanatical about this. Some people are very open about it. I've sponsored all kinds of people. Swingers, adult film stars, all of it. Some of them can stay sober, some of them can't. There's no rule, but there's going to be a rule on the next page. So it says, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. Okay, notice the prayer here. I've asked him twice. I've asked him to remove my fear on 68. I've asked him to mold my ideals here. I've asked him what I should do about each specific matter. The answer will come if I want. Okay? God alone can judge our relationship situation. It's just like he says in the 9th step. Sometimes no outsider can counsel us on this. It's a personal affair. We realize some people are as fanatical about relationships as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice. And this is where he talks about motives. So suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we're going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but it's only a half-truth. It depends on our motives. Here it is. If we are not sorry for what we've done and have an honest desire to take us to better things, we believe we'll be forgiven. Now here's the warning. Circle it if you're new. This will save your life. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. Okay? We're not theorizing. These are facts out of our experience. Now to sum up about relationships. Middle of 70. We earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity and the strength to do the right thing. And here's the next. This is a really a powerful direction. If relationships are troublesome, and they're going to be. I've never met a woman that wasn't difficult. I haven't. If you have, it's probably one of them new robots, right? It says, if sex is troublesome, relationships, we throw ourselves harder into helping others. That's the rule. If we continue to harm others, and when we get in trouble, we don't treat loneliness with isolation. Because that's what I do. I treat anxiety with caffeine. I treat depression with country western music. You don't think I need sponsorship? I mean, come on. AA is the only place where you can get what? Medical advice from a junkie? Get criminal advice from a felon? Relationship advice from a stripper? Yeah, that's what the fellowship's going to look like for you if you don't do this. If you don't default to the literature, that's what you're up against. We pray for guidance. in each quenchable situation. And then it gives you the last piece here. If you've been thorough about your inventory. These are the questions I read with someone before they do their fifth step. Have I been thorough? Yes or no? Have I written down a lot? Yes or no? Have I listed and analyzed my resentments? Yes or no? Have I begun to comprehend their futility and fatality, hopelessness, and have we commenced to see their destructiveness? Yes or no? Have we begun to learn tolerance, patience, goodwill to all men? I have not got there all the time. But God did make my enemies. For we look on them as sick people. There it is. The sick man's prayer. We've listed people with whom we've hurt. And these are the final ideas. It says, in this book you'll read again, faith did for us we cannot do for ourselves. We hope you are good that God can now remove from you any self-will which has blocked you from Him. And it says, if you've made a decision, third step, an inventory of your growths or handicaps, fourth step, you've made a good beginning. That you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about myself. So what I'd like to do, if there's any questions, let's do it, and then we're going to come right back and do 10 and 11. Any questions at all? It'll take 5 minutes.
Hold on, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
You talked about redirecting, like fear to faith,
Yeah.
selfishness to helplessness. What would the other?
Selfishness to unselfishness. Dishonesty to honesty. Resentment to love. So the Oxford group had 4 absolutes. Absolute love, absolute unselfishness, absolute honesty, absolute purity, which is keeping my eyes on God. Those 4 fundamental ideas are spiritual laws. If you go to Akron in the Midwest, all they ever talk about in AA is the 4 absolutes. That's like a big thing there, but it's the opposite of what we're looking at. The opposite of honesty, dishonesty, fear, faith, selfishness. So they're just redirecting me away from those 4 things. It's just like the defects: pride, anger, greed, gluttony, lust, envy, sloth. Next to each defect is a virtue. For pride, it's humility. For anger, it's self-control. For lust, it's chastity. For greed, it's charity. See, I'm moving towards the virtue. If I can move towards the virtue and ask God to help me with this, I will commence to outgrow the defect. I can't stop the behavior. But if I redirect my behavior towards service and towards helpfulness, the defect loses its power. That's what it is. 5-minute break, and then we'll come back.